Well, welcome everybody to this month's edition of our Information Governance Community Roundtable. We seem to have hit a particular nerve with this one. Very excited to be talking about it. Retention ramifications for AA prompts and outputs. I think I just said IA. It's AI. That's because I'm going too fast. Anyway, um, just by way of setup, we have managed over the past months to get into a rhythm where this has become a very worthy analog to an in-person roundtable, where people raise their hands and interject themselves into the conversations. And especially with so many people here today, I'm really hoping that we can take that to the next level. We're here, Donda and Jesse and I, and we'll introduce ourselves in just a sec, to provide this forum to talk about the things that we're dealing with day to day when it comes to governance. Um, we have a wide range of topics that we cover from month to month. We certainly encourage you to send us your suggestions for what you'd like to see covered. And it's for you. It's not really for us. We're just providing the forum, and it's my turn to be the MC today, so we'll keep the conversation going. It will be recorded, all of this, for future posterity. So if you want to review something, feel free. If you want to share something that's particularly sensitive, please remember that we are recording this. I can certainly edit out something that you let slip, but I like to start with that bit of a caveat. We should consider this as if we were sitting in a hotel lobby somewhere convening. So with that, thank you again for coming. We have too many people to go around the room for everybody to introduce themselves. So let's just start with we three moderators, and I'll ask you if and as and when you have a comment the first time that you speak, if you just wouldn't mind saying who you are and where you're from in terms of what company you're with and even what geography you're in. I was on a call this morning with some folks from New Zealand that we didn't expect. So these are not only universal by our jobs, but by our locations. So,
Yeah, and I would also offer to the group, if you're one of the shy guys or girls, um, you can certainly introduce yourself in the chat, as Jesse had mentioned. Where you are, maybe your title or where you work, whatever you want to share. This is kind of an open community, and we encourage that, and it's, a safe space.
it is a safe space, although we may call on you, so be aware. Um, Donda, thank you for that. Why don't we start with you for your brief intro?
Sure. So Donda Young, I am the CEO and principal consultant at my own company, Helios Consulting. I started that, I don't know, 3 years ago-ish, and long time industry person. Spent most of my career in the insurance space, and then jumped ship over to a couple of different vendors, one of them being Big Blue IBM. But now I'm here, independent consultant, helping out folks like you, and doing this kind of thing because this is kind of a passion area for me. Some of you know me really well and know that I love to be able to give back and mentor folks and support you in your career growth. So that's just a little bit about me.
Great. Jesse, enter and sign in, please.
Yeah, I recently transitioned to working for Epic Global, which is a business and legal services consulting firm. I've been doing this stuff for longer than I would care to admit. And I geek out over this stuff. And I think many of you probably on the call geek out over this stuff too, hence why you're here. So I'm looking forward to the chat and seeing what everybody can do to solve the problems of the day.
Great. Thank you. And last and perhaps least, depending who you are, I am Steve Weissman. I am the founder and CEO of a consulting firm called Holly Group. I can't believe in various ways, shapes, and forms. I have just celebrated my 30th year of doing governance relating consulting work and journalism and things. And all I can say in my own defense is I used to be a lot taller. And this is my gig. If you trying to get your arms around what to do and how to manage your information, we look at it from two perspectives. We want to certainly help you decrease your risk, but also unlock opportunities, because there's a lot of gold to be mined in the information we're sitting on. And a lot of that care and feeding begins with, do we even have to keep this thing? Which is my clever segue into why we're actually here. Yay, at last, Steve, move on. So the question really at the core of all of this is, when, if ever, is an AI prompt or output a record? Should it be? And if it is, if they should be, how would you go about retaining it? Is this even an issue from the response to our announcement of this forum? It seems like it is an issue. And I'm curious, as we all are, to know, is it an issue for you right now? Is it something you're looking at? Are you here because you need CEUs and we had AI in the title? Because we get folks like that. Lindsay, thank you for smiling. These are the jokes, folks. So who wants to start? Like to sort of go around the room and take the temperature. Should AI prompts and outputs be records? Who wants to start? Don't all answer at once. Angela, I'm sure you have an opinion.
I knew you're going to call on me.
That's because you're smiling.
Okay, so that's because it's smiling. Should AI prompts be records? Well, if I look at the definition of what a record is, it's something that creates one, potentially. But does it show activity? That's the question. I'm like, maybe not. I don't know. But also, if you don't know what everything's going to be going into the prompts. Why are people prompting? What are they doing? What are they using that information for? So it's kind of, you kind of still have that it depends factor and context. That's my thoughts, just to get the conversation going.
A hearty vote in the I don't know column. Excellent.
Yeah.
I don't know either, which is why we're here. Susan, you look like you were going to say something.
I was going to say, I think I kind of agree with Angela, but I think it depends. What's your purpose and what are you using the outputs for? Do you need to validate? Do you need to hold on to the prompts for a longer period of time? Or are you just, searching vacation information, or what are you actually using it for? Is it something that you're going to have to go back because the prompt is what formed the basis for a record?
I'll buy that. Oh, look at that. Catherine, you're actually using the tools. And Monica, raising the hand. I did that this morning. I gave somebody a thumbs up by mistake.
So I absolutely a prompt from the government side of things most often is a record. And I don't like it, but it's like what kind of a record it is sort of what Angela was referring to just now. It's the purpose, the content, which is going to govern whether it needs to be kept or whether it's transitory. It keeps me up at night because the added bonus of all of this is regardless of what kind of record it might be, the prompts might be, if we get a public disclosure request that is asking for it directly or indirectly, we've got to capture them and produce them. And it hasn't proven to be easy.
Right. Monica, you're next.
Good morning, Monica Montes. I'm coming from the electric power industry, California ISO, and I manage the compliance risk and controls team, which actually includes not only our regulatory compliance risk management, but also records management or information governance, if that's kind of how you're looking at it, and then also our GRC tools. So I think the first part of that question for me is taking it a little bit higher level to understand where are we in our organizations in regards to AI, GenAI, analytical AI. Do we have an AI policy, right? How are we defining that for our company? How are we framing it? and what is our sort of approach towards it. Because I think not knowing that, I think we're, in our case, we're setting it up right now. We're very much in an infancy of this. We have an all AI policy that predates, we have currently a company-wide Copilot version that we use, right? But our AI policy actually predates that and provides, information that sort of is no longer really relevant, but yet everyone has open access to this more restricted Copilot. We're in the critical infrastructure, so we are very conservative with what we put in there. It is limited. You can't upload files right now, etc. So I think having a policy and a framework around this that can then map over to your records management policy, right, is probably going to be key. And I would agree with the last speaker, I think it was Catherine, that, beyond records, it's is it going to be subject to legal discovery, right? Because ultimately, regardless if it's an official record or not, we do have to have our arms around that. Thanks.
It's a great answer. So we got you in the yes column, yes probably column. These should be. And I put a virtual pin in a lot of the things that all of you so far have brought up. We have created a list of things we wanted to be sure to get to, and we've already hit a number of them. So bear with me as I kind of weave them all together. But before we do, Cheryl, you've waited patiently. Go ahead, caller.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Cheryl Benke. I'm the CEO and founder of Belvedere Consulting. I've been in the records and information governance space for, don't want to date myself, but well over 30 years. So about like you, Steve, but I help companies and consult in information governance. I've been thinking about this. I've been reading this book called The AI-Driven Leader.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been thinking about this for the last several months. And the librarian in me has to ask you all the question, do you think that searches in Google that employees do are a record? I don't think so. So
Jesse's all excited. Look at him go. What is your thoughts?
So that's where I come from. I haven't really decided one way or the other, but I have to naturally think, what is the organization doing? And it depends on what they're doing. If they're in a technology space or if they're in government, you may need to do that, right? If you're using AI as your way to provide software, maybe you do need that, and that is a record. But my just natural day-to-day mindset shifts to that. Every time I go and do a Google search or whatever interface I'm using, is that a record? And I think it's not. So I'll just offer that.
No, that's great. Jesse, before you go, I'd like to, if it's okay, I'll come right back to you, I promise, after this commercial. No, we have no commercials. But I did, just as a putting a fine point on some of what everybody has shared so far, our friend and colleague, Laurence Hart, many of you may know, and those of you who don't, you should. He's a busy guy. He doesn't write as much as he used to, but he's definitely worth a follow. Anyway, he sent a couple of specific examples, and I want to share a quick one that's kind of in between. It's not quite all the way towards Google search. And like I said, Jesse, we'll come right back to you. But Laurence points out something like you're using a prompt. You've got a transcript of a meeting, this call, let's say, and you're talking about things, and it's internal, and we end up talking about some sensitive stuff. What if we then take that transcript and apply a prompt that says, and I'm reading what Laurence wrote, create a summary of the meeting, including action items, excluding all mentions of our holdings in Florida. Suddenly, there's some evidentiary component to this, because this has been almost pre-redacted. There's some important stuff. Somebody's made the decision they don't want circulated. Is that important? Can they blame that on the AI? It's the prompt itself. Do we need to save the prompt because someday there's a lawsuit because some company comes in and says, you didn't talk about Florida? so it ripples out, and we talked a little bit. We heard about some of the legal liabilities here. There's a case, and here, Jesse, I'll turn to you. Some of what we had talked about in the past is there even an evidentiary component to something somebody searched on? Does it show intent? I want to build a bomb or something extreme, I don't know. So I know, Jesse, you have 2 hours worth of thoughts on this, and we have less than an hour to go.
Well, a couple of things that Cheryl brought up, and then I have something to share that I saw on the ARMA community actually this week that bears here. I think a lot of it depends on the use case, first and foremost. A chatbot that is providing incorrect or potentially response that increases liability of the organization is obviously a little bit different from take my boss's 14-page email and summarize it into 2 bullet points, right? So intent matters, intention matters. I know a lot of us are actually starting to use searches in place of Google. I almost never search Google anymore. I search Perplexity, and it will give me source documents as well as an output. But is a search a record? I would say generally not, unless it is, right? If you're doing e-discovery, the searches, the keywords that you use to generate potentially responsive information can be quite important. And they do have to maintain track of those and in some cases turn those over to opposing counsel or to the judge to make sure that they were sufficiently detailed. The thing I wanted to share from the ARMA community was, again, it kind of goes on to the chatbot example. Consider 2 examples. This is from a person by the name of Michelle Bear. You're using a chatbot for general purposes, and a marketing guy wants to know what the population of Cleveland is. He asks, he gets an answer. What's the ongoing value of that? Nothing. But what if the HR department implements a chatbot internally through Workday, perhaps, as my company has, and somebody logs in and asks that my boss is sexually harassing me. What should I do? Now you've got a huge problem, right? Because the answer could be good advice, bad advice, non-committal advice. But at this point, there's a legal liability probably attached to that conversation and potentially even to that prompt if it's part of the conversation. I have similar concerns about allowing software to write or AI tools to write software without human in the loop. And I think a big part of the whole AI, especially the generative AI discussion, is human in the loop. But I think it really does depend on the use case and, frankly, your organization's tolerance for risk. Elsewhere in this same thread, people talked about how they would keep it for as short a period of time as possible, being transitory, and they'd be more concerned about the outputs than the actual prompts. But I think it's all over the map, which is why we're here today.
Yeah, and you brought up risk tolerance, which is where I was going to go next. Donda, you've been suspiciously quiet. I think mostly because we've all not given you the opportunity, starting with me.
No, it's all good. I'm enjoying the conversation. I'm very happy to see that folks are using the chat, but also speaking up about this topic. Sometimes our events are a little quiet from the audience, as I would say. So, no, I think, we have to look at AI similarly as we have done to our collaboration platforms, right? We have Slack, we have Zoom, we have Teams. It is in the context. Now, I get, Catherine, that from a public entity perspective, you, Angela, and others on the call, that's a completely different ball of wax, right? But in general, I look at AI as this is just another piece of tech that is being thrown at us, just like all the other pieces of tech that has been thrown at us over the decades. And we have to figure out what works best for us where we are in our organizations. Now, each organization, each industry, that's going to be a little bit different flavor. We just heard today that from a public entity side, That's a big different flavor, right? From the discovery side, that's a different flavor in a law firm or lawsuit kind of flavor. And the governance aspect is definitely important. What we all have seen and still experience today is that when you throw another piece of tech, Teams, Slack, Zoom, any of the others, plus this AI thing, which you're conversing with a computer and giving you outputs, we've had a challenge, still have a challenge today with those aspects of those collaboration platforms and not being able to properly govern them. So this is just another thing that we have to try as best we can. Are we going to get it perfect up front? No. Are we all learning at the same time? And depending on industry, is there going to be a best practice at some point? Maybe this entire group with all of our heads together will come up with, hey, this is what we think might work in this type of situation or this type of context. And we can, maybe, Steve, there's an output from this particular meeting, from our AI that's recording this, that we could share with this group, that may help you in your daily jobs. But I think because, yes, AI has been around for a while, I still think there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot that we don't know yet, and how the courts are going to force us to make some decisions.
Okay,
Not any answers, but just a little bit of insight. Like, this is a piece of tech. It's another one, and we have to manage it as best we can.
now watch how I pull the threads together. Monica, hang on one second, just because I'm excited that I've got one eye on the chat, and you guys are great. I'm so happy that you're utilizing it, as Donda said. So I'll reference two of you at once, and then we'll turn to you, Monica. On the subject of it's just another piece of tech, just to beat that horse closer to death, Jesse, when we were talking about how to approach this topic for this meeting today, you were likening it to what you used to teach for CIP on social media back in the aughts as something that was new, that was a different channel for information, and how do you wrangle it? I may have just stolen all of your thunder, but maybe you could talk for a few seconds on that.
Yeah, I was reminded 20 odd years or so ago, I wrote a course for AIM on social media governance that got dozens of attendees. It was a spectacular course in my own mind. But one of the things we talked about and referenced was that at the time, the Environmental Protection Agency's guidance for managing social media posts as records, as they were wont to do, was to capture a screenshot, print the screenshot, put the screenshot in a folder, put the folder in a filing cabinet. Fortunately, I think we've come a little ways on since then, and of course, there's any number of tools that can help that for social media, but I think we're in kind of a similar place, at least contextually, with AI. How would you, and this is one of the topics we want to talk about on this call, is if you say that you have to manage them, how do you manage them? And I think we'll come back to that a little bit later. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let Monica talk.
Yeah, I love the discussion. Gosh, and I'm looking at the chat too. And I had a question, but my first reaction, in regards to sort of one of the chat things I added there was in regards to, isn't it just like, source code? But I recognize that, the learning and the training around these are very different than our traditional pieces of tech or source, right? So to what level of retention do we need to, contain that information beyond prompts? How did we train that LLM? Or if we're using a vendor, what is our visibility to how they were trained, and also how we're setting that for our infrastructure, for our organization. I think all those things probably need to be answered as you're defining your policy around retention and requirements, retention requirements, records policy requirements for AI prompts and for AI outputs. But my other question that I had raised my hand on was something that I think was triggered by the previous lady. I forgot her name, maybe Donna, about legislature. And, we know that in the US right now, I think it's not, a mandatory. There's some US, I think, legislature around this, but it's more flexible. But in the outside of US, there are, especially in the EU, there are very stringent, I think, legislature that has been passed and is getting even more stricter. So I just think that that might continue to evolve. And I wanted to hear, as we talk about, as you guys transition to risk acceptance and risk monitoring around this, what is your view in regards to that when we think about the ever evolving, laws and regulations around this, not only in the US, but also within the EU and beyond?
Yeah, and picking up there, and at the risk of putting you on the spot, Derek, I was looking at your chat post from a few minutes ago, and please feel free, if it's too sensitive a question, not to share. And that this is not that kind of forum. But you had mentioned that you have a draft of your AI user guidelines in front of you right now, literally or figuratively. I wonder if there's anything in there that you feel comfortable sharing that might get at this larger question. I don't know how high level this may be, or maybe you can share the issues that you're hoping to at least hit on, whether it relates all the way to dealing with legal compliance, or is this an official policy? Will this lead to maybe you can give us an idea, since you made the mistake of sharing that you're actually working on something right now. I am smiling when I'm saying that for those who don't have video on. Is there something you can share with us about what your thinking is?
Yeah. So as a little bit of background, I'm in-house at Jabil, a large manufacturing solutions provider with locations all over the world. So obviously a lot of people in the company are very excited to be onboarding, an enterprise level AI, whereas a lot of us in legal are, obviously have our concerns about it. I think that as a baseline, are these chats going to potentially be records? I agree with the sentiment that, in certain situations, there are absolutely going to qualify as records and potentially be discoverable in court. But on the other side, I think a lot of it is going to be kind of more like the Google search type description, and that it's likely not anything that you would have to save. My kind of theory about the whole thing is I want to keep it for the least amount of time legally required and business requirements, but also mindful that these AIs might need to retain a certain level of history in order to be able to help you with your projects. For instance, if I delete all my chat prompts, from 2 years ago, let's say we're in the future now, and I had AI 2 years ago, but if I need to go back to that project, is that data going to be there? And if you deleted it, obviously there's a chance it might not. So we're trying to find the balance of balancing the risk and making it still valuable to the business as a tool, because obviously the more requirements we put on it, the less value they're likely going to get out of it. But right on the bat, we're trying to draft a very broad policy that is going to, say things like, only enter data that is lawful or complies with company policies. But then you get into, what is considered lawful. So there's a lot of things that individual users aren't going to have a real handle on when they start using this. So I think training and the policy is kind of your key to determining how long you want to retain it until we get to the point where there's some sort of legislation passed or the judiciary starts kind of showing us what their thoughts are on it. To date, I don't know of any cases where, chat prompts have had to be released, except for in situations where it was like intellectual property and they're trying to analyze the tool itself and not anything someone was doing with the tool. So those are the only situations I'm aware of, but I absolutely think that, it's going to be in litigation. It's going to be in discovery at some point, and we need to have policies, to work through that data quickly. Because in my worry is that we get into situations where someone sits down at, ChatGPT or Gemini or whatever and says, you know, would doing XYZ be in violation of like the SEC or, something like that. And that's a situation where I think if you ask that question, that's absolutely going to be discoverable if litigation were to proceed after it. So it's we're trying to make these very broad policies so that one, we're covered from a risk standpoint, but also being mindful that, the more detail you put into your policy, the more stress it's going to put on your users and potentially IT. But I'm thinking, I know ChatGPT recommends 90 days. So right now, unless I heard something different from the industry or anything coming down legislatively or through the courts, I'm inclined to go with that 90 days and just try to work through it, kind of like we do with Teams. Like we keep our Teams messages for 30 days. We rotate through those very quickly, being mindful that people are often very loose in how they use these tools and might not, put the best information in there. So, if you're not under the gun and have any litigation pending or anything like that, my advice would be to, set a policy that cycles through the information pretty regularly.
Thank you for that. Angela, go. You've got your hands up. Go. Take it away.
Okay, well, just a comment though. I think one of the struggles with creating all of the governance around it is the tools are coming out so fast and there's so much. It's like, where do you start? And I know a lot of organizations are struggling to even get a handle on AI, let alone prompts, just prompts. So where do you start? So I know that the volume and the speed are a factor in getting things, especially when you're in government and everything takes a long time to get actually put through. Like once something's approved, it's out of date by 2 years.
Yeah, just to follow up on that comment, I would say that we, as legal, we kind of view ourselves right now as slowing down the more tech or business side that are immediately like, wow, this technology is amazing. We need to implement it as fast as possible. We kind of took a slow down approach because one, we don't know what the detriments and downsides are going to be using these tools moving forward or the risks until some things start happening, people being careless with use of the tools. And I think we very firmly decided we don't want to be the test case that creates the legislation or the rules about that. We want to make sure we have a solid understanding. But I agree, it's up to us to kind of slow the aggressive onboarding of these types of tools because everyone's really excited to use them. I understand that, but there is downsides that we don't understand.
Yeah, no, good on you. Cheryl, I see you. Let me just add, it's back under the heading of nothing's really new. We already talked about social media and all that stuff in terms of a precedent to look at for this sort of thing. Years and years ago, I wrote about something I called management by magazine. And it's like your senior executive's on a plane and he reads something in the business magazine and comes back and throws it on your desk. Says, how come we're not doing this? And then you are. And certainly a lot of my clients, when it comes to AI in particular, are in that boat. What are you using it for? We don't know, but we were told we have to. So that kind of the ability to apply the brakes somewhat, I think, is absolutely so critical because it's hard to undo. Cheryl?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to Derek's comments about kind of proceed with caution. I don't know if you guys heard, there was an article, I believe, in Wired magazine recently about McDonald's use of AI for HR hiring.
Yes.
And it was quite a breach. So I agree with you, Derek, that it is, we have to know exactly what we're doing with it, and we have to be very careful with it. So just offer that in case you guys want to keep an eye on how that turns out for McDonald's. We'll see.
That's a whole different can of worms too. I mean, I don't know that well, I do know it's not exactly AI, but it all gets so muddled. So in the HR context, I guess it's the latest and greatest thing where before you even have an interview, you record a little video, you answer certain questions, you get 2 cracks at each question to record something, and then they decide if they're going to interview you. And I always thought, certainly as a hiring manager, how does that even really help? It's like no time at all, and you can't get a sense. But it's like, okay, well, what happens to those recordings?
Mm-hmm.
So that's not AI, but for a lot of people, they think of it as AI because it's something new. It smells like a robot or taking the people out of the process. So I do think that the slowdown is critical, in part to understand what are the limits, what are we talking about, and to hit on a theme that surfaced earlier. Essentially, what kind of AI are we talking about, and for what purpose? Are we using it to help us to write an article, to summarize a meeting, to write code? Instinctively, just having a policy that says anything that's related to AI needs a retention period of X seems wrong, seems arbitrary. Is that better to just start with that than nothing else? I don't know. But it's really amazing how quickly all the layers of this particular onion fall away. Now we got all these pieces to go, okay, how does this connect to that, to the other thing? Donda, I'm going to come back to you to talk a little bit more about that. You spend a lot of time, in particular, helping organizations create programs for their records liaisons. How often has this kind of thing cropped up in your work? Do you expect that to accelerate? What do you say? What do you tell them?
Yeah, it's definitely accelerating. It's I'm glad I brought this topic to you and Jesse for us to have this conversation. Because I may be a consultant, but not all consultants know everything. We're not going to know everything. And because AI is such a new-ish implementation for a lot of organizations, being able to provide that guidance is critical. And it does start with the governance. You do have to start with, well, what kind of policy are you going to put around this stuff? Are you going to update your DGIG policies to make sure that, you may not want to say AI specifically, because again, there could be a next piece of tech later. So you want to keep it a little ambiguous there. But in developing these coordinator programs, some of the conversations have been had like, hey, our company's starting to look at AI, and what is that going to mean for me? And my answer right now is, do they know what it means for them? If not, that's going to be a little tough to support you without knowing what their policies, their processes, their take is, and how you're going to use that. Because there may be some circumstances like the HR teams where maybe they just say, you know what, from an HR perspective, that stuff's not going to be used. But if they are using it, let's have a deeper conversation. It's like that records analysis process that a lot of us records managers have done historically. Why are you using it? What is it used for? What are the outputs? Where are you keeping it? It's some of those foundational conversations that you still have to have, but it's just that you're using this AI thing to produce these outputs, and having the conversation about, well, you created this, I don't know, this great metrics deck for your senior leadership. Well, how did you do that? You used an AI. Well, what were your prompts to create that? Can you validate? Does your AI prompts, and I'll use Perplexity because Jesse and I both use that, it gives you the references in which it pulled from. If your AI internally is doing some of that to give you, oh, hey, Copilot, it's actually attacking some of our internal stuff to give you that lovely metrics document and putting those things together and referencing those, that's gravy, right? You've got the documentation that supports your output. But does that output, does those reference documents have to be a record? Maybe some of them already are. And this is just an analytics output where if you had to redo this over again, is it going to attack the same things again? Don't know. These are all kind of unanswered questions right now.
So then we're
So
back.
Donda, I was going to say, sorry, I
No,
was
no,
going
go
to
ahead.
say, I think what we're all saying is this is like a prime opportunity
It
for
is.
information governance people to really, be part of that conversation, drive that value, engage those stakeholders, and, really bring things together. In not a scary way, but in a good drive the value way. So the business can continue to do what it does best, right? So
Yeah, because
yeah.
if you're putting quality data in your environments, and this is what I go back to when people talk about AI with my clients, they want to do AI, they're implementing AI, they're starting to do POCs, etc. And then I ask them, well, is your data in really good shape so that when you throw this AI at it, that you're going to get the outputs that you want because it's actually quality data that you're pulling from? That you've tagged your stuff appropriately, like records managers have been saying since, I don't know,
There were records.
early 1900s. It's that kind of foundational things. You have to build that foundation first to be able to get those outputs that you really, really want. Because if you're not doing that, you're doing it wrong and you're doing yourself, your organization, a disservice by not doing it properly. So yes, Cheryl, absolutely. Records managers, toot your horns, tell them how you can support the efforts of AI. And I have to tell this little bit of a story. So 2 years ago, yes, 2 years ago, I was sitting at a table at the AIM conference. And there was this young lady. We were talking about AI and some other things, and her comment was, well, I'm just a records manager. I don't touch AI. And I'm like, I had to sit back and like quiet myself because I really wanted to say, no, 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 no. I didn't want her to feel attacked because, we're all a family. And I said, this is your opportunity. And this actually sparked a conversation. And this year's presentation that I did at the AIM conference. And it really sparked a conversation about you're not just a records manager. You're that foundational pinpoint within your organization that is going to support so many things moving up that ladder from the foundation. You have to have your foundation. If you don't, everything else on top of it, just like a house, just like a skyscraper, it's going to fall at some point. It's going to shift, it's going to swivel, but you have to have your quality data. And yes, Ange, we've been shouting this for decades, and hopefully, and I'm starting to see it more and more, not only in our association spaces, but in various different media, that they're calling on records managers to support, that they're having gaps. The state of Maine, where I'm at, has a FOIA issue right now in DHHS because of their systems, because they don't have that foundational element. So you guys that might be on this call that you're thinking you don't have a say in this AI thing, flip the script. You are the foundation that's going to support AI, and tell them how and tell them why. And if you can't tell that story yet for yourself, get a mentor, start reading lots of things out there that support why RMIG, DG, data governance, information governance, is so pivotal in getting the AI stood up in your organization and how you can support that, because you are a valuable resource that they just have forgotten about.
Or never knew.
Exactly.
I had a client, there was one department, they didn't even know they had a records department. It was just mind-bending. Um, so yes, amen, and huzzah. And to add to it and sort of sweep up some of the other crumbs that we've unearthed, to mix the metaphors. A big part of this, to your point too, Donda, like not everybody knows everything, even if they think they do. The AI emergence provides new opportunities for different sort of wrinkles some of these other kinds of folk may not have come to realize yet. So going back to the crumb, we talked about, we want to make this repeatable as a process maybe. And so what about saved prompts, and are they records worthy or not, and all, how about the two other wrinkles? One being you can get different responses from different engines. So it's beyond the prompt and how you write it, which I still maintain may well become a job function of its own, like being a poet, except in AI terms almost. Can you imagine prompts in haiku? Extra points. But so, okay, so you have a repeatable set of prompts that you're comfortable with, but what if you change to a different engine? Or you're playing with them, and then public versus private. So that prompt that you put in now becomes part of what's feeding the public engine that everybody else is using. And maybe that waters down responses that there's so many nuances to this that when it comes time for you to do it for real, you have to address it all. So now we're back to the slowdown idea that we talked, with Derek about earlier. And I think there's general consensus here is that we don't really know yet, and it may take a lawsuit at some point before any of it becomes defined, at least here in the US, because that's how it works here in the US. We have to keep talking about it. We have to keep talking to each other. We have to talk to organizations. I'm excited when I looked at the reg list to see how many perspectives are represented on this call. How many different kinds of organizations, and here's information people, and here's legal people, and here's go forth and prosper, man. This is the point. Who else has been silent? Jesse, we haven't heard from you in a little while.
Sorry, I'm busy burning up chat with haikus. No, what I just posted in the chat was the thing that first sparked the conversation for me and with my internal folks here at Epic, about the problem of retaining prompts as records, and whether you should and how you couldn't and whatnot. And I was just typing when you called me out that
Sorry.
there is a Reuters report that it links to, which I found fascinating. And so I would heartily suggest that everybody take a look at that, because I don't know Morgan Lewis very well, but the article struck a number of notes with me and got me to read the Reuters report. So yeah, I think we're all kind of dancing around the key issues, right? We want human in the loop. We want to understand the risk and manage the risk appropriately. Well, we're not dancing around it. We're confronting them. This is one of those topics where this is so bleeding edge, I guess, that I don't know that we have an answer. And so I mentioned in the chat earlier, we have the thread that Derek started on the ARMA community. We have a very similar thread on the ILTA community. There's another thread like that further back in the ILTA community. It's good, I think, that we're starting to think about this. I know that for the first 20 years or so of email, records managers were kind of like, la, 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 we're not going to deal with that because it's too unfamiliar, it's too technical, it's too this, it's too that. And how's that working out for us? 50 years into the email era. I'm sure all of you have pristine inboxes right now.
I don't even have an inbox.
Uh-huh.
That was my solution.
So it's good, I think, that we're grappling with this as an industry and as professionals in the industry. I don't pretend to have all the answers, but I think a lot of the things that we've brought up are the things that we need to work through with our teams, with the people who are tending to use it more and in ways that are potentially more risky. Certainly, there's a big privacy component to a lot of these tools too, in terms of chatbots, in terms of automated decision making, like the McDonald's thing that was referenced earlier. So I think it's incumbent on us to kind of keep thinking through these in forums like this, in forums like the ARMA, ILTA, AIM, et cetera communities, and just kind of bounce ideas off of each other.
Is it too early? You had mentioned to us in the setup to this, I think it was Tiffin University, if I wrote that right. You can actually
Yes.
get a Bachelor of Science in Artificial Intelligence and Prompt Engineering. Is that
Yeah. And I have actually looked at what they include in that academic thing, and it is a fairly solid computer science degree. So, but the fact that they're calling it prompt engineering to me smacks of marketing speak. Apologies to any marketers on the call, but it's not a degree in prompt engineering. I would run screaming the other way if somebody came to my organization and said, I have a degree in prompt engineering. Really? What did you do with your life? I do think it's a
legacy
skill
English
that we can all
majors?
get better at. Um, and I think that one of the things we have to kind of think through, and I alluded to this earlier, is whether or not a prompt could be indicative of a potential state of mind that would be problematic. The example we gave about exclude the Florida, or that Laurence gave about exclude the Florida holdings. Um, that's scary, and yet people will do that all the time, especially as they start threading through, and refining their prompts, and you get this whole prompt chain that shows the entire chain of thought over the course of a day or two to how you got to what you ended up with. And I think in most cases, it's amazing. It's awesome. It's fantastic. In other cases, lawyers are going to run screaming for the exits because they're going to be terrified of what they just read.
So you'd phrased this sort of thing previously with us, focusing on the prompt and the prompt process. And besides the alliteration, I really like the way you encapsulated all of it in that phrase, because it's more than just here. I asked it this. It is all that context. We had also talked about, is this a forum that we could end with some like solid advice? Is okay, how do you do this? How should you write a prompt? And I think based on what I've heard today, it may be a little bit early for that. Beyond, keep in mind our usual compliance disciplines, and keep in mind that the answer you get as output from an AI prompt needs to be viewed just like anything else. Would this stand scrutiny in the court of law, the court of public opinion? That fundamentally nothing has changed, back to Donda, that this is just another tool. It's exciting because it's new. It's scary because it's new and people think it's going to take over the world. But at the end of the day, it is all about the business context and the rules within which we have to operate. And I realize that sounds very much like a conclusion of sorts. And I'm looking at the clock, so maybe it is. Before I turn to my co-conspirators here for their final thoughts, let me thank everybody on this call for being here and being so forthright and so willing to share and engage. It really makes this what it's supposed to be. We did not want this to be the Jesse and Donda and Steve show. So thank you for that. Is there anybody who wants to provide a final thought? We'll just leave 2 minutes at the end for Jesse and Donda to weigh in. To appreciate all the hearts. I'd live with this like Valentine's Day. Okay, since nobody rushed to the microphone, Jesse, you have any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, it doesn't really directly relate to what we've been talking about today, but I heard it come up a couple of times. I don't think we should be doing AI. Big, scary air quotes around that. It's use case specific. That in turn is going to drive the risk. It's going to drive the potential liability. It's going to drive whether or not we think we might need to keep this stuff and for how long.
Donda, you want to play us out?
Yeah, I would say keep the conversation going. This group, you are all now connected. If you are not connected with any particular individual, Jesse, myself, Steve, or others, do so on LinkedIn. Let's further the conversation. I did put in the chat, just for some of you that may have missed it. We do have a recording of this. We do generally put that out on Steve's YouTube channel. And we will try and get a transcript of any of the links that might have been shared in the chat as well. If we can do that, we'll share that also with you so that you'll have those reference points. I know sometimes it's hard to capture all of these things while you're highly engaged, and you all really have been. So thank you for your input, your conversation, your thought processes, because it does take a village to make this thing go round. So thank you for that.
Really great stuff. Thank you. We endeavor to do this the third Wednesday of every single month. Do keep your eye on LinkedIn for announcements for the upcoming one. Keep those cards and letters coming, and do join us again. This was really terrific. Thank you very much. We'll see you then.